Hello, my name is Sheila Cry. I'm president of the Washington, D.C. regional chapter of Les Dames d'Escoffier. Welcome to Holiday Traditions through Black Diaspora Foodways, this month's monthly episode of a series of regular online programs. Most of the attendees this evening are members of Les Dames d'Escoffier International. Thank you for choosing to spend the next hour together with us. I'll say a few words about the international organization for the benefit of attendees who may not be familiar with who we are and what we do. Les Dames d'Escoffier is French and means the women friends of Chef Auguste Escoffier. He was the 19th century French chef and restaurateur who popularized and updated traditional French cooking methods. We dames are food and fine beverage professionals. Each of the 43 Les Dames d'Escoffier International chapters is a 501c3 nonprofit organization and upholds the mission to inspire, advance, and support women in food, beverage, and hospitality to achieve excellence in leadership and philanthropy. Our activities are geared to provide education and to raise funds for grants and scholarships that will benefit primarily women in the region of Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, and Delaware, except for Wilmington. Our moderator this evening is Bonnie Buchanan, head of the global accounts at Wine and Spirit Education America. Bonnie was inducted into the DC chapter in June of 2023. Welcome, Bonnie.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here with you all this evening, and I'm very excited about our topic. And without further ado, I'll go ahead and kick this off if everybody is ready to get started. So tonight, as we approach the holiday season, we are going to be talking about what are some of those traditions that everybody gets excited about. And we are specifically going to be focusing on traditions are not always the same for everyone. And so tonight we have two really, really fascinating speakers with us. And so I would like to introduce you to Nina Oduro, the CEO of Dine Diaspora, who focuses on connecting people and brands to promote African diaspora, forgive me, food culture, and she does this throughout the globe, and she's also the co-founder of Black Women in Food, and that helps to address the gap between opportunities that Black women have in the hospitality and food industries. Alongside Nina, we also have Tonya Thomas, who is a co-owner at H3irloom Food Group in Baltimore with her husband, David. And they also have some additional restaurants alongside the catering business that they have called Gastro, Café, Ida B's Table. And they focus on African-American cooking and soul food traditions. So she has some really interesting things to share with us this evening. She also has wonderful family traditions that I hope she's going to dive into a little bit, starting with the fact that back in the day, she discovered that a lot of her family members were oystermen up in the Maryland area. And so with that, I don't want to take any more of your time, or their time, I should say, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Nina and Tonya. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bonnie. It's a pleasure to connect with all of you and chat with you about what our holidays are like and what it means to be part of the Black diaspora celebrating the holidays. So I just wanted to say a quick hello. And I will be speaking personally, I am born in Ghana and raised here in the DC area most of my life. And so my perspectives really come from the merging of all, American culture and Ghanaian culture. Tonya?
Yep, thank you so much. Thanks for introducing us, Bonnie. I want to make one correction. I know you brought up about Urban Soul, Gastro, Café, and Ida B's Table. Those were our former restaurants. Those are things that we had in the past. Right now, our whole focus was H3irloom Food Group and what we do with H3irloom right now. I just want to make sure I clarify that. But I'm just great to be here this evening, and I have the opportunity of, like Nina was saying, discussing the Thanksgiving traditions and what I'm used to, of course, being born and raised in Baltimore, and the traditions that have been passed down from generation to generation in my family, and it's something that we still carry forward to this day.
Yeah, Tonya, maybe can you start us off with some of those foods that remind you of Thanksgiving holiday, particularly from your childhood?
Yes. For us, traditionally for us, I know people always expect the turkey on the table, which we had, and a lot of the other things as far as stuff and dressing. But we had a plethora of food on the Thanksgiving table that I always remember in growing up. With my great grandmother, even with my grandmother and my mom, it's something that we always had probably like 4 to 5 proteins on the table. We always fed more than a family of 10 because it was always where generations came together and gathered for that Thanksgiving holiday. It wasn't just a small family gathering, it was usually more than one generation that would come through, and you would have so much food on the table. One of the things that we always traditionally have and still have to this day, and I've carried on the tradition myself to now pass down to my son and my granddaughter, is having sauerkraut on the table. It is one of the sides that we traditionally have along with everything else on the table. It is something that I remember my great grandmother having every Thanksgiving. My grandmother would cook it every Thanksgiving. My mom would do it. I remember watching her do it. She actually used to do 2 different versions because she grew up with one, and I wasn't a fan of some of the things that was in the one that she would do. So she would make one specifically for me when I was younger. And then I carried on the tradition, and now I still carry it forward, with my family and teaching my son and my granddaughter that tradition that we have on the table.
I have to dig into that a little bit. What is it that you do on your sauerkraut? Like like you said everyone does it a little bit different. What is yours? What is your touch on it?
So traditionally, when it started, with my great grandmother, my grandmother, and my mom, they always had some form of pork in it. But traditionally, I know that for years it was always pigtails. It was something that they always added into the sauerkraut. And like I said, as a child, I was not a fan of hearing that pigtails was in my sauerkraut. So when my mom would fix it, she would fix hers differently. Sometimes she would still use pork at the time. She would use salt pork or something. But I just didn't want the fact that pigtails was in my sauerkraut. That was me. And as I got older, it was different. And she had changed it as well. So it evolved where there was pork in it to smoked turkey. My mom was actually the first one to change over using like actually smoked turkey in it. And that's something that I still do to this day with mine. But then we know how things have changed. So with, being with Heirloom and wanting to bring that tradition when people order from us for the first time when we started or offered Thanksgiving for people during COVID to be able to have those traditions to have in the home, I actually developed a vegan version and be able to still give that same flavor, but it has where there's no meat. I don't use the stock and still be able to develop those flavors in that sauerkraut, the same as if you had the smoked turkey in it.
So are you telling me that we can order it from you now for next week?
But guess what? The orders, they closed yesterday. But it was on there. That was one of the options. The brown sugar sauerkraut was one of the options.
So what about we have another holiday coming. Can people
We
order?
do. And if we do the holiday orders, I usually offer for both Thanksgiving and the holiday orders for next month as well.
Okay. All right. Okay. Love that. Maybe I'll share a little bit about me and the staples on our table for my family. Where do I even begin with that? So growing up in Ghana, first of all, one thing that we don't have is like a whole turkey. Like that's not a thing.
Okay.
And so coming to the States, and I came here when I was 7. So, I remember enough about when I was in Ghana and things like that. But turkey wasn't a thing, but I think for my family, it was so important to have me and all the children in the family experience an American tradition that even though my mom didn't really know how to cook like a whole turkey the way that everyone else does here, she literally focused on learning and like figuring it out so that we could also like go to school and be like, oh, because if you don't have turkey, did you have Thanksgiving? Like I don't think so. Traditionally for like, you know, celebrations and things, it would be chicken. It would be like, you know, just, you know, and no one really like, what are we going to do with turkey? So I feel like we would always do it just so we could say that it was something that we did. But on our table would also be like a jollof rice, which is obviously
Oh,
like
yes.
a big deal. Every day, you know, it's not, it's funny because it's a dish that, you know, we eat every day, but it's also a party dish. Like you can have it the day before a party and still have it for the party. It has to be there. It's such a staple. But and just rice dishes. Just we would have like three different types of rice dishes: a fried rice, a jollof rice, and then there's a rice called wache, which is basically a rice and beans, like the Caribbean rice and beans. We have our own as well, and we would all three are fine. So lots of rice, different types. And I think that's a staple. And like chicken would be definitely a staple, and of course, I'm trying to say, and then we would have like things that you find here too, not in Ghana, but particularly here, just things that we like. Maybe other people don't have for the holidays, but if my mom thought that we were going to eat it and we liked it, it would be on the table. I think as you know, I don't have a family yet, but as I figure out like what I would do for the holidays now, I hosted like a Friendsgiving, and last year or a year or two ago, and I had like jerk chicken. Like I just did whatever I wanted because I grew up in a family where it was about just having on the table what you like. When I look at like my sister's family and other people in my family and looking at like how they're defining what it means to have a holiday tradition and being from another country and embracing the culture, for them, it's been really about like making sure that their kids feel like they're experiencing American culture. And that means like having the turkey, and not having them feel like, oh, I can't, if I go to school and everyone talks about a turkey, you know, I can also chime in. So there's a lot about like feeling included in a national culture, but also retaining our lens of what is truly, you know, our own culture at the same time.
And that makes sense. I'm thinking back, you know, with both of my great grandmothers. So my great grandmother that we always went to that would have everyone in her home. I reflect because I think she traditionally kept what Thanksgiving was for them, you know, because you know my great grandmother was born in South Carolina, migrated to North Carolina, and then migrated to Baltimore. This one particular on that side, and she would have everything on the table. And I think, you know, what she said, why she does that is that she remember when they first would celebrate Thanksgiving, it was about definitely the family coming together, but then thinking about the abundance of the food that they were able to put on there and to enjoy and celebrate together with. Because you think about the time of the year that this is celebrated in the fall, for a lot of them when they were still, whether they were sharecroppers or still working in the field, and they were able to have all these different items. It was like a celebration. So I think that's why it was so many different things that wound up on the table. She had everything from turkey to ham to fried fish to, it was everything that, you know, you can imagine. But like you said, it was making sure that everybody would enjoy something, because everybody might not want turkey or ham, but she made sure there was everything available for somebody to be able to enjoy that meal. um I still think about it. It's making me a little emotional because I remember she used to cook so much and never wanted anyone's help to do it, which still floored me. um and then for my, you know, my great grandmother, um that at that time my grandmother would help nurse and take care of her. And every Thanksgiving, she did not want turkey. She actually did not like turkey. So her request was capon. She preferred that chicken over having turkey. And so every Thanksgiving, my grandmother specifically prepared capons for her. She would eat everything else, but she did not want turkey. She wanted capon. So it makes me reflect on that because some people, believe it or not, do not like turkey. And both of my great grandmothers knew that, so it was where they always had this other option available for them to eat.
Yeah.
And it's just, but I remember all the different sides. And you talking about rice, and I remember rice was on the table, along with every type of. There was corn pudding, along with mac and cheese, and she would have not only your candied sweet potatoes, but she would have mashed potatoes. Then she would have potato salad. So it was like three different ways of having potatoes, um, along with greens and green beans and cabbage. So it was like everything that was just available for everyone to enjoy. And it warms my heart. It's something that I remember. It's something that I think what we do, even with heirloom and invoking those memories, is having all those options for people to be able to choose from when they order from us. It's like everything we remember having. Well, these are all the options that you have for sides. And one of the things we did want to always do is have something different. So we do offer chicken. We offer chicken and we had turkey, but we also offered a Burberry lamb pot roast. So that was something that, was a different option for someone that didn't want that. And so if someone requested, David always fights back on it a little bit. Well, we did offer a vegan meatloaf for our vegan people, so they had something as well. He always say he just looks at us like, I said, but they love it. You notice everybody still comes back for your vegan meatloaf. So I know you look at it a little, I don't get it. He looks at it, I don't get it. I said, but you do very well with preparing it, and everyone loves it. So our vegan customers come back and they make sure they get their vegan meatloaf. So.
Yeah. So I think Bonnie asked a question about what side dishes would my mom have. Not unlike some of the things that have already been shared, like mashed potatoes was always on there. A lot of my family were immigrants, right? So a lot of things that are American, they were learning all the time how to make. Like you can go to like a Boston market, whatever was like accessible, and they'd be like, oh, I like this. And then Thanksgiving would be the opportunity to be like, let me try it, which is like the worst opportunity to try any dish. But it wasn't like we were consistently like, if I wanted something that was truly American that my mom wouldn't make on a regular basis, she might just buy it. But Thanksgiving is like that home time that you make stuff. So it gave them the opportunity, especially my mom, to like really, really dig in and try new things. We also had like a lot of different pastries. So my aunt was actually a home science teacher. And so, everyone would bring something, and her thing was rock buns, meat pies, just a lot of baked stuff was her thing. And she had like a fruit salad that she would make. And this was like a fruit salad, it was a sweet fruit salad with condensed milk. Still to this day, we request it for everything. We're like, but are you bringing the fruit salad? And she sets up times where she's like, I want to show you everyone how to make the fruit salad. We don't care. We don't want to make it. And it's probably the easiest thing you can make. There's no cooking involved, but the fact that she's around and she continues to make it is part of why we cherish it so much. But just now she also like visits everyone, different people in the family, and teaches them some of her baked goods. But different people were tasked to also bring some of the favorite things that, tell us about rock buns. Oh, what would that be called? It's a British term, I think, right? It's a British.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, well, rock buns, yeah. So that would be, I have to look that up. But it's a muffin. It's a muffin.
Okay.
It's a muffin. I need to look up like what a scone.
I think a scone. Yeah, I was just gonna say.
Oh, so it's like a scone.
It's a scone,
Like a
and
scone?
she would make those. Yeah,
Oh.
we would add it to like she would add that as well. But I'm like, what is a rock bun? I don't know. I didn't realize that it was a different term I should be using, because that's what she calls it. But yeah, so just it could be like a whole bunch of different things, but it was a table of favorites. That's what I would call it. It was a table of favorites. And that's similar for the Christmas holiday too. And I think what I sense the most even now is like the beauty of being able to create the table as you wish. From all of the different, and that's how I grew up, right? Because we always had to, every holiday in the US was about all the time us defining it for ourselves. Of course, like my family had no clue what Thanksgiving meant or was until, and they were learning with me. So oftentimes as an adult, you're immersed in your work and all these things, and a holiday comes, you're just kind of like, wonderful, I get a day off, all the family, but you know, there's a lot of meaning behind these days that are not global. And so as I was going to school, I was learning what that day really meant, right? So while they were just kind of glad to just get a day to relax or not go to work, the meaning behind it fell to the wayside. And I think for most commonly, the holidays for many, many families like mine, it becomes about that, right? Like, let's get together, let's be in community with each other. And then the messages kind of get lost if we don't learn them. So for my family, it was important for me as a young person growing up here to be the ambassador of that. Like, what does it really mean? And some people have traditions where they go around and everyone says like what they're thankful for, like my family adopting that and like actually finding more meaning in it, as well as like getting a day off.
It's funny you say that because that's something we traditionally do every year. The matriarchs usually lead that. What are you grateful for? And everyone has to go around the table and say the one thing that they're grateful for. And that's something that we do every single year. My mom is usually the one that leads it. If my mother-in-law is present, she leads it because for us, they are like the matriarchs, that are leading everything at this moment. So they're the ones that do that tradition as well. And when you were talking about the gathering of everybody taking that time of coming together, it was a question that was asked of me recently about that. What Thanksgiving do you really remember the most? And it was actually it was in '97. It was that long ago. And it was actually right after my grandfather had passed. And, life catches up with everyone where you don't have the opportunity of everyone coming together. And we always remember how, the family of both, my grandmother and then my Aunt Maybelle is what we called her. Her name was Maribel, but we called her Maybelle. And that was my grandfather's sister. But all of that family would gather together every single year. And we had not done it in a while. And after he passed, we were like, we need to get together because it was an unexpected, when he passed, it was unexpected. We were not prepared for that to happen when it did. And David and I remember said, we're going to open up our house and we're going to have all the family come over. And at the end, we had almost 80 people in that household that came together that year. And when we reflected on everyone that was there, they were descendants from two women, my grandmother and my Aunt Maybelle. And that was everyone that was there. And to this day, years later, because I think that's the last time we really all gathered, other than going to a reunion in that way, they still remember that Thanksgiving. They still remember it. And that's something that, I'm glad that we were able to do that. It was a special time for all of the family, and I will always be grateful for that day. And we always aspire to do that again. Of course, since then we've lost both my grandmother and Aunt Maybelle, and it's something that's hard because they were the rocks to the family. A lot of people, if anyone understands having that matriarch, they were the matriarchs. And a lot of times I look at it now, they actually look at my mom, even though she's the second oldest in the family, she's like the matriarch right now. She's the one that tries to help keep the family together. And when something happens, they always go to her. So she's the matriarch right now when it comes to, the family. And before I also forget, when you were talking about, I have to go back to that fruit salad with the condensed milk. It wasn't just fruit and condensed milk. It was something else in it.
It's like different fruits. There's coconut shavings.
That's ambrosia.
Okay.
When you said it, and that was one of the desserts we had on the table, other than cakes and pies,
Really?
was ambrosia salad.
Are you
with the
serious?
coconut and the fruit.
It's the best thing in the world.
It is, and kids love it because this is like fruit and it's creamy with the coconut and oh my
Mhm.
goodness, I remember. And everybody has different variations of it. You know, I've had where somebody added like nuts in it, like pecans or something. They had a crunch to it. But I do remember that was a tradition that she made every year as well. Was that ambrosia salad?
What? Look at that. I was like, who has this on their Thanksgiving table? I'm like, I don't know what we're doing with this, but it's good. Turns out it's a thing.
It's a thing. It's a thing. And it's something I love. This I remember we had like some various had little the marshmallows and the people had so many different ways of
Yes.
adding to this. Yes.
Mhm.
Yep, that's it. I remember
When
that salad.
you just reminded me of like how some of the foods traditions that we have. I was thinking about some of the challenges that like some of the things I've been talking a lot about with my friends about like carrying on some of these food traditions over generations.
Hmm.
And my challenge was, when are the older people going to give it up? Like, when are you going to pass the torch? Because I feel like with my generation now, I'm a millennial, and I feel like the older people are just holding on. They're not trying to be like, okay, younger people, you host the holiday this time. They're really so. I think that I talk very vocally with my friends and things about this because I feel like, is it that we're not seizing an opportunity? Like, should you like go in and be like, everybody's at my house next year, but then you have to honor those that have been doing it. You can't just do
Hmm.
that. So I feel like there needs to be like a passing the torch, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden the aunties and the grandmas and whatever are like, moving forward, we'd like to find a new person and bestow them, a whole ceremony around who will do it moving forward. Otherwise, I think that it's very hard when they're not around anymore. That's what I think a lot about,
Yes.
those that carry the
Hmm.
mantle, when they're not around anymore, and we've been so used to
Them
receiving,
doing
and
it.
not hosting. And it takes a lot to host. That's another thing. I was like, I gotta prepare myself. Um, it costs money, time, money,
All
time.
of it.
um,
All of it. I remember when we did it that one year when we had all of the family. They would say, "Do you want us to bring anything?" And I was like, "We didn't ask for anybody to bring anything." So
yeah.
David and I fixed all of the food. And that was our first time really hosting. I think that was 97. So we had been married for 5 years. So and I remember when we first got married, I think it wasn't until 94 because we got married. We lived with my parents for a while before we had moved into our own home. And it was 94 because no, wait a minute, 93. So it was the year after I was carrying Brendan when I had to do my first Thanksgiving by myself. And it was like cooked for my family. It's like I was like, I gotta cook a turkey. I've never done this before. I was like,
Mm.
all of that. And I remember calling my grandmother because I love my mom and I tell this story all the time and she appreciated it. My mom taught school for 32 years and she did not cook things from scratch, as we say that terminology from scratch. And trust me, I'm grateful and thankful. I never went hungry. But she was used to when she prepared Thanksgiving for me, it was stovetop stuffing. It was yams in a can. I mean, yams in a can and all. But
Yes.
it was a beautiful Thanksgiving. Loved it. But when I did my first one, I was like, that's not how I want to do it. So I actually had to call my grandmother and say, how do you make your stuffing? How do you do this? And so my first one that I cooked, I was so proud of myself because I had cooked everything from scratch and I did it myself. Um, but that was a challenge, and that was just for my small family. So I can imagine reflecting back to my grandmother and everyone that did it for 20 or more people. I was, that was a I know it was a chore. So when we did decide to do that in 97, I said, what were we thinking? But we chose to do it and we so grateful and thankful for doing it. We didn't want anybody to bring anything. We did everything from all the food on the table to even things that they would have to eat on when they first walked in. So while they were waiting for things to be completed, you got a little snack that you can eat on, and we had all the desserts, and that was an undertaking. Hence, you can see why I said we did it in '97. We never
Yeah, are you
did
we have
that.
a question in chat too. Like, are you ready to take on those reins to like continue those traditions hosting?
I would. I mean, I try to do it now every year. I'm gonna say for years because we wound up spoiling my mom, and I can't remember when we started that. When we started cooking the Thanksgiving meal, she no longer cooked it, and she has not cooked it since. So every year she automatically says,
Who's
"What are we
hosting?
having for Thanksgiving?" She only say, "Host, what are we having for Thanksgiving?" She has not cooked in years. She has not had to worry about it. She knows that we got her covered, and so we're already doing it in a sort of way. Even I think it was last year we had family that came together and we prepared, Thanksgiving. So we're used to doing that. But I know my goal is to be able to reign and bring all of my family in. I know some of them have moved and somehow bring everyone together to do that whole generational gathering once again,
Mhm.
and take on
Yeah,
that
and
undertaking.
that's
So.
honestly the beauty of it too. Like, it's not just about, we're, having Thanksgiving. It's one of those moments in families where everyone can come together. And I find that those moments so important. And without, the ability to host enables you to be that convener.
Mhm.
That question in chat, like basically is saying like, am I ready to take on the reins? I'm not. I'm not. Let me tell you a little bit about my family. My mother has 9 other brothers and sisters. So imagine how many kids that means
Mhm.
from those brothers and sisters. And that, like, the kids, the grandkids, it's a huge family. Convening a family like that together is an undertaking. Um,
Yes.
and not only, it also starts a lot of fights. And escalates some that you never even knew existed. Um, so we have to. So right now, I think that the bigger thing is like, yes, I would be. However, are people ready to pass it on? Because I think I would take it out of necessity. Because my whole thing about hosting and bringing people together, for the holidays, for food and communion, is that I think that it's so necessary. Like, I think it's
Mhm.
a necessity for it to happen. But I think that I would also not only really take it on if there's a gap. Because, and I think it's also because, like, I'm the baby of the family. Like, in my nuclear family, I'm the baby. So the mantle will never be upon me. there's seniority in this process.
I was gonna say technically it should be someone older that's doing it first.
The people that you could even tell in a family who is the next. It's not me. The next one is not. I don't look like the next. I don't behave like the next. And nobody is coming to Nina's house and feel like they're gonna leave really full. Like, that's just not what they think that's gonna happen. They're gonna be like, are we like gonna leave full, or like, if I have to bring the turkey, then did she host it? I don't want. I think for me, being the youngest, that it comes with a lot of judgment. It comes with a lot
Mm.
of shade, a lot of disrespect. I don't want a part of that. I just want to be free in my youngestness and attend others, but advocate for some change in terms of. I think I say all that to say I really do feel like in my family, especially, that there needs to be a conversation around, like, a serious conversation about, like, who is next and
Mhm.
how do we carry these traditions, because my
Exactly.
fear is that some of these are lost because
Mhm.
no one feels like they are either worthy, like the way that I just explained myself, either worthy, ready, the idea of being ready to, like, can I take this on upon myself, or the appropriate person, even, like,
Mhm.
am I stepping on someone else's toes, or is grandmother ready for me to do it? It can be a whole
Right.
lot of, stuff around that.
Yeah, I think it's funny because I know you're saying about passing the mantle and the torch and carrying it on. And for us, unfortunately, when a lot of us took it on, it was because someone did pass. It never happened beforehand.
Yeah.
Um, but what we're grateful for is that we all was so observant through the years that we have all the traditions intact. You know, but everyone doesn't have, the opportunity to do that. And there's some things that I didn't, outside of Thanksgiving, that I did not really have the opportunity to observe and carry on the tradition in other forms. But also, did not have a knowledge of everything because I wasn't there to observe it. It was not something that was passed down. So my great grandmother, and they said this for years, and I always get upset because when she passed, I was younger and was not in the mindset that I was ever going to become a chef or be where I am now. But she used to make her own root beer. And I said, no one got the recipe for this root beer. And I think about it this they just we never thought about it. And I'd say, oh my goodness. So in my mind, I'm actually trying to research, being that she was born and raised in Maryland. She was born in Calvert County. That's where, my family that I've traced back to the early 1800s was in Calvert County, Maryland. So I'm really trying to look into, she knew how to make root beer and she learned it. How did they do that? What was the tradition of learning how to make that there? So I've been
Mhm.
trying to carry that back. And then my mom always talks about these buns that she made, and she would try to describe it. And I was like, keep describing it. I'm going to try to recreate it. I don't know if I can because no one has the recipe, but all you can do is try to give me a description of what it looked like. What was the flavor profile? And I'm going to see what I can do. But it was something that she made every year, but no one
Yeah, it was
really took
always on
the
her.
recipe and the information. It was always on her. So I think a lot of it, what stopped was that, the great grandmother that I'm speaking to, she wound up becoming bedridden and she no longer could do those things. But no one never took the time to say, you can't do this now, but these were the things you used to do. How do we do it? And none of her grandchildren ever asked. Like my mom and my aunts and uncles, they did not ask. So I was like, wow. And I remember, I wish, I always think about it. I was so young and I would always go in there and speak to her, but I never thought to say, what were the things that she used to, that it wasn't there, so those are things that I wish I had the opportunity to do. But I didn't have the opportunity. I remember going to, what is it called? The book festival in New York one year. Um, Dr. Jessica B. Harris was there. We had this whole discussion about, carrying on traditions and being able to obtain the recipes and information. And at that time, Gabrielle Etienne was there. And one of the things that someone spoke with is having a lot of that generation had apprehension of even talking to the older generation and asking certain things. And Dr. Jessica was saying then, no, you need to take the time to sit and talk. Yes, they're going to be like that. Some of them, they don't have time to deal with these youngins, but you have to really come after them and get that information from them. Just,
Mhm.
keep honing and say, if you want this to carry on, if you want to build a legacy, you're going to have to be able to, you have to give this information for us to carry down to the next generation. So you
Yeah.
can build a legacy. You can't take it with you. And that
Yeah.
was something I still remember. So that's why even now, as I gather and do research in my family, I'm like the first in my family to do the research and the work that I'm doing. And I've uncovered things that people didn't even realize, like my great grandmother. They always thought that she was born in North Carolina. I said, nope, she was born in South Carolina. And they
Mm.
did not know that for years. I mean, for years, they did not know that at all. So
Wow.
when I pulled up the census and I said, this is where she was born, it was like, wow. I said, exactly. So she was not born in North Carolina. Her family moved to North Carolina. She was
Mm.
born in South Carolina, and I've been tracing that back. So it's things that I've uncovered that the family did not even know. So
Yeah.
these are things, that's why I said it's something where approach and talk to that generation. If you have the opportunity, do that now. This is what I give this advice to anyone. I said, if it's something that that you have, anybody that's older than you in the family might have information of family history and culture, gather the information so it's a legacy that you help build for your family and pass down to the next generation.
I totally agree with you. I was just on a call with my aunt over the weekend, and she's the home science teacher from back in the day. And she was talking about, she's about to visit my sister, and she's about to have my sister's daughter. She's about to teach her some baking recipes or whatever. She's like maybe 10. And I was like, we have to do our cookbook, our family cookbook. And so she was like really energized by that. And I was telling her, like, we need to capture these recipes. At first I was like, let's do a family cookbook. And then I was like talking about it, and I was like, nah, if we start a family cookbook, we'll never finish because people aren't going to turn in their work. And I don't have time for that. So I said, we'll start with you. Since you're invested, we're not bringing everybody along on this ride. We'll leave them behind. And once you do yours, maybe others will be serious about it. But if we try to do a whole family one, we won't have a cookbook. And so like, that's kind of my way of doing exactly what you said, right? But leaning into what she already enjoys. And she's retired. It's kind of like, those projects are energizing for her now that she has the brain space to even lean into those things herself. And so partnering with her and really embracing something that she's been doing for so long, but honoring that it's going to come to the whole family, it's going to be so beautiful. So she's waiting for me to give her guidance now. So if anybody here wants to support her, I'm like, oh my God, I've given myself a task.
This has been so many great points that you guys have brought up. And I just I don't want to cut you off at all, but I do want to go ahead and just highlight a few questions that have come through when we've got our last few minutes here. I'm scrolling back and I'm seeing there was actually a question for you, Tonya, with an interest in a little more detail about your sauerkraut making. Is this something that you're doing like from scratch, like you're fermenting the whole thing yourself? Can you tell us a little bit more about what's involved in the process?
Okay. So, I mean, I'm not getting the cabbage and fermenting it myself. I wish I had the time to do that, but I actually do get the sauerkraut that's totally plain. It has no flavor to it. The cabbage has been fermented, so I really have to take it from there to build the flavors that I want out of it. So incorporated into it is, of course, the spices and all the flavors that I want to get out of it. It's you still have that tang of the sauerkraut, but a little bit of the sweetness and the spices that I put into it, and the smokiness from the smoked turkey helps out, you round out the flavors of the sauerkraut. It's like I said, it's something that I've changed. The recipe itself, I've tweaked, from what my great grandmother did, my grandmother, and even my mom did to the level of where it is now. But it's still where they always added brown sugar to the sauerkraut to round out the flavor of the sauerkraut when they prepared it. And then I just took it and just worked to evolve it from what I remember to where it is now.
That's fantastic. That's great. Thank you. Looking here a little bit further, we've got a question for both of you. And I think this is a very funny question. Are there any traditions you want to forget? Any awful food items that have come across the table that you sort of said, Aunt so-and-so, please never bring that again? Are there any kind of memories that you have of that?
I have to think about it a little bit. Tonya, you want to go?
I was going to say, I don't have, I don't remember.
It was all too good.
Yeah.
I really don't remember anything that I did not. Oh, well, for me, this was a tradition that my great grandmother did fix every Thanksgiving, and all of my family loved and enjoyed it. Hog maws and chitlins. I don't eat it. I don't eat it. But I mean, I would look at it like it does look good, but I just so that's a tradition that I have not carried over. Out of all the things that I remember being on the table, that's one that I never have carried that tradition over. And and it's not just because of me. My mom did not even fix it. More so because she was scared to prepare it and not prepare it right. So I think that's why I never even though I didn't eat it, it's something I would still put on the table knowing that people enjoy it. But because she didn't know how to prepare, I didn't really know how to prepare it and would not know how to prepare it right. Now, David does. He can fix it. So that's something we could bring to the table if we wanted to, but it's something that I just never do.
I think I would say there's not anything in particular. I actually like overcooked vegetables. I think they're really tasty. But for me, because like I told you, like some of those holidays were about testing recipes, like you just said, or doing something you didn't really know. I would like to leave any of that behind. Like, do not do stuff you don't know for a holiday, or something you're not confident in. My sister, last Christmas or so, this was like the funniest Christmas we ever had. So my parents have moved back to Ghana, so they're not actually a part of some of the holidays that we have here. So it's usually like a whole bunch of young people getting together. My sister hosted, and she decided that year, Christmas was on a Sunday, and in Ghana, Sundays are, I guess it's been popularized that you have a particular dish. It's not mandatory, but those are rice balls with peanut butter soup, right? So people kind of like, oh, Sunday we're gonna have it, it's not mandatory. No one's forcing you. And so she was like, oh, it's a Sunday Christmas, so we're gonna do it. So case in point that we kind of do whatever we want. So that's not really a holiday tradition at all. So it was I was kind of like really like, it's very limited, but I was thinking that there would be a lot of other dishes in case you weren't interested in participating in her theme. So she does this, we all get there. It's like, my brother, my sister, everyone, her kids, and she outsourced this rice balls and soup, like someone else coming, one of her friends made it, and it was so bad. It was, can you imagine? This is like the main event. So we all are like, and you can tell we didn't taste it. You could just tell by the soup that it's not the consistency it's supposed to be. It's really watery. So we all look, the kids, everyone would look and then be like, no. But then there were like only side dishes left. And so we didn't know, it was the worst thing. So we all have to be quiet, get through this thing hungry, eat a salad, pick at some leaves, like do whatever. And finally the person leaves and I look at my sister and I'm like, and she's like, I know. It was the funniest Christmas. And I was like, and now what are we going to eat? Like, do not do a theme. So lessons learned, don't do a theme, and don't outsource the theme dish of a theme to somebody else. So that's what
It was a fantastic story. Thank you so much for sharing that. Kind of following into that, I think you both kind of touched on this question a little bit, but just to make sure that we dive in a little deeper, is there anything that you would really want to leave as your mark for future generations? So, if you want something to be remembered about you specifically, or a new tradition that you want to add, is there anything that you have in mind that would be like, this is going to be like my personal kind of contribution to the future? And I'll leave that to whoever wants to comment first.
That's a good question. That's a really good question. I don't know. Like, this is really trying to think on it.
I think for me, like for the holidays, like I said, I haven't had the opportunity to bring the family together around my own celebration or my own hosting. So I am kind of getting ready through like Friendsgivings, I feel like those are the new ways to get ready. And so I haven't had the opportunity to really figure out like, what is my, stamp on this, but I kind of think I know what it will be. I think for me, we haven't talked about this, but it's really around like the decor. Like all my friends know me, like, I may not like figure out everything that's going to be eaten, but it's going to look amazing. Like, the table is going to be beautiful. And we can't forget about people like me. We're going for the vibes, like, who is setting the tone around what the holiday feels like, that is in combination with the food experience. And I think I think for me, it allows me to also be a part of whoever's hosting. I can still provide that, and it can still be meaningful. And so, yes, the food, but I look like, what does the table feel like? What are the conversations going to be like? How do we, despite some of the differences that we're having in the family, how do we infuse joy and laughter? And I think for me, that is my authentic immersion into a holiday season that I really want to make sure that everyone feels in the family. So that's what I bring.
That's a good one. I mean, I like that. I like that. I think I had to really reflect on this. I think I'm always, and I think I haven't achieved that yet, trying to reflect back on a tradition that's been lost in the family. And I think that's something that I always aspire to every year, is bringing something that was lost forward. So I'm always trying to look at what is it that we missed that was always a part of it, and bringing that tradition forward. And then also, what do we want to have new on the table that's not traditional? So that's always been the challenge. What are we going to have this year that's not your traditional thing that you would have on the Thanksgiving table? Because I know my great grandmother used to do that. She would always make something and was like, what is she going to do? What's different? What's going to be the new thing on the table this year? And that's something that I think I want to bring that back. It's just always trying to aspire. What do we want to have different on the table? What is new this year? Everything else you kind of used to, the whole spread, but it's that one new thing every year. Um, and it might be something that we've experimented with, but it's in a good way. In a good way that will wind up on the table. So I think I want to bring that tradition back that my great grandmother used to do.
Mhm. That's great. That is so, it's really wonderful to hear both of you talk so passionately about these things that you remember. And I think if we had all night, we could probably share around the table some of those things that really make us all kind of feel warm and fuzzy inside when we reflect on some of these things. And I have just one quick final question. Tonya, you kind of touched on this very briefly, and then I'm going to turn it over to Bonnie Benwick because I think she's got just a couple of things she wants to mention. But you had talked about root beer, and from being the person in the room who's in the beverage industry, my question to both of you very briefly is just, are there any other beverages that were on the table for you all during these holidays that you remember fondly?
My grandmother used to make, and nobody knows how she did this. And I think the only person that did was Aunt Maybell. She passed. She used to make this punch, and we don't know how she made it and what was in it. She was the only one that was like the tradition. I mean, she would make this punch, that everybody could drink, but it was a punch that the elders or the oldest could add something to it and drink it, like spike it. But then it was where the younger generation that couldn't drink could drink it as well. And we don't know what was in it. I remember enjoying it. It wasn't something that was like overly sweet, but no one knows how she did it. And I think my Aunt Maybell knew, but she didn't pass it on. And I think it's unfortunate because, like I said, we have family that never thought to ask. It wasn't something that they considered out, and it was one of those recipes that we know, and a lot when it comes to our culture, that sometimes they were not written down. It was something that was verbally passed on, and if that was not done, then it gets lost. And that was a drink, that was a beverage that we had, and no one knows how to make it because no one asked Aunt Maybell, and even if they thought about it, she wound up, before she passed, she had dementia. So it was a lot of things. If it wasn't, she wound up developing. So it was a lot of things that if they wanted to ask, that they were not going to be able to get it from her.
Yeah.
It's so interesting that you share that, because I feel like for me, it's similar in that drinks were not a big part of our celebrations. And it's not just because, and it's similar, like I think some of those traditions have gotten left behind, like literally. And so when you go to the village where my family is from, people still make some traditional local what would I say, alcoholic beverages, and also non-alcoholic. But growing up, I didn't really experience those. And I think there's just, the process of making it from scratch, coming to a new country, not having those ingredients. But even in Ghana, we didn't live in the village, so it's not like we had access to the ingredients readily anyway. So, and the process of making them. So a lot of those things got left behind. But what is always common, no matter where we were, was that you would have a malt drink.
Mm-hmm.
So if you know anything about malt, and if you know a Ghanaian, it's the Goya brand is always in a Ghanaian household. And so it would, for every like holiday, anything, any gathering, that is always there. But unfortunately, a lot of like the traditional traditions or things made from scratch in the house, there was no focus on that.
Yeah. Wow. I like so many great things. I have so many notes here. I wish I could comment on all the things you guys have said. One of the things that I am definitely going to be remembering are Tonya's words about like, let's be mindful and ask those questions you want to ask now. I myself just had my 82-year-old uncle come visit, and it was one of those moments where you're like, I need to remember these things. And just hearing how you put so much flavor on the table. I mean, I had rice on the table, but it was not like Nina had, trust me, and it was not as delicious. So I am very excited to learn more about that. But I just want to final quick thank you to everybody. Thank you to the Les Dames members that are here, and thank you to everybody from outside. And most importantly, thank you so much to Nina and Tonya. I'm going to leave the last few minutes over to Bonnie Benwick, who has a few updates for us. And beyond that, I just say happy holidays to everybody.
Thank you so much, Bonnie. Thanks again to all of you for joining us, and to Nina and Chef Tonya. It was just fun to hear you guys chat. I mean, and you're both adorable and very talented at what you do. And I wish I had ordered food in time from Chef Tonya, because when she was talking, she made me hungry. We're going to sort of follow in next month's, we do a monthly Zoom online. It's free for DOMs, nominal expense for others. And we're hoping that you'll come back, because it's kind of holiday based, but it'll be a crowdsourced thing. Les Dames is filled with members who have lots of expertise in the kitchen and with beverages and wine and kitchen tips and Foodways tips. I mean, we can do it all. So what we're all going to do is sort of get on and share our top 2 or 3 tips. I'll make sure that I write them all up, and we'll spend an hour or so sharing the information with each other and making everybody's holidays better. I think if you email me at benwick.bonnies@gmail.com, I'll put it in the chat. Send me, just text me or call me or email me if you're interested in participating, and just let me know what your tip is. And then we'll make it so that you don't even have to be on for the whole hour. I'm going to try to break it down into, kitchen things and food waste things and turkey things and Christmas things. Whatever you've got. I think it's always good that we learn from each other, like we learned from Nina and Chef Tonya tonight. So thank you again very much for joining us. And believe it or not, this is a Les Dames episode where we're actually wrapping up a minute or two early.